And then I started flipping the question back of like, okay, what are you doing to solve this problem, or how are you navigating the future of the games industry to sort of get through these hard times? And that's when I started hearing, a lot of references to just like game popularity. You have to hack the awareness system and the, the algorithm. And how do you do that? I'll give you a couple examples.
We're like, what is going on?
There's people listening to this right now being like, there's no way that's real. There's no way that's real. That's OSHA. The OSHA violations comes back. He's like, I got to catch my flight. And so I had a moment where me, Lawrence Taylor, and Matthew McConaughey talked about Sahara.
Adam, how you doing tonight?
Good, John. How are you, dude?
I am doing pretty well.
Fantastic.
So where are you calling in from?
I'm calling from North Shore, Chicago. Just
all right.
Chilling in the coldness. I mean, it's warm today.
Yeah.
It's all melted. All the snow's melting.
So congrats on the new company.
Thank you.
I'm curious, was this brewing for a while, or did something specifically hit you to be like, I'm going to take the leap. I'm ready to do it.
Yeah, it was one of those things, John, where I've been working at Iron Galaxy for like 8 years. I love the squad, love the team. They're awesome. But I started to, so it started with like, I have this little spirit animal that awakens within me every 4 years saying I need to go and do something new.
Right.
And Iron Galaxy was the longest job I've ever had by twice as much. I think COVID sort of screwed everything up, including my spirit animal. I think my spirit animal got COVID and hibernated for 4 more years. But it was like, okay, what's the next chapter of my career? What's the next chapter of my life? And I started thinking about a bunch of different things. And it actually dawned on me when I started speaking with studio heads and leadership people in the games industry. I asked about 10 people in the industry, like, what do they think the number one problem is in video games?
Yeah.
And I asked 10 people, and they gave me 10 different answers.
Really?
What do you think it is, by the way? What do you think the number one problem is in video games?
That's a good question. If you get into AAA, I think it's the arms war, right? Like, it's just, right? And it's like you need teams of thousands of people and a $500 million budget and stuff. And it's like, how is that sustainable? How's it profitable? How do companies get an ROI and not do anything outside of the box other than, well, we know we're going to make bank with this game, so let's just stick with it. I mean, that's my short answer, but that's focus on AAA. But yeah.
No, that was one of the answers. So I kept asking people because I kept getting different answers. I got the first 10 people I asked had 10 different answers. I asked 20 more. I got about 18 new answers. And I kept a list basically on my phone every time I pull up my phone and add the list. And so I could literally read them by, in time, in sort of historical fashion. And so the list is 122 problems.
Wow.
So when I looked at that list, I was like, it's so broad. There's so many different things. And everyone's so adamant that one problem that they think is the problem is the number one problem.
No, dude, it's this thing. Yeah.
It's this thing. Yeah. And I realized that sort of like we're all sort of being hacked in a way that we're being tricked to think that one thing that we are so committed to is the problem. Right. And then I started flipping the question back of like, okay, what are you doing to solve this problem, or how are you navigating the future of the games industry to sort of get through these hard times? And that's when I started hearing, a lot of references to fancy New York consulting firms and stuff like that, being brought in to give guidance on these companies. And that was confusing to me because back in our day when we were at Midway together, there's no consultants. There's no one from a big consultancy. It's like literally maybe someone's cousin or uncle comes into Midway and it's like,
you gotta get on this game, kid. That kind of stuff. Right?
You got a new Sakara supplier, okay? You got to buy from my uncle. He's getting he's doing
the galvanized.
Yeah, he's doing the galvanized steel plant, and you're gonna buy some stuff from him, or else your legs are gonna get broken.
Right. Swim with the fishes. Yeah.
Right. And so I kind of realized that these capital extraction specialists have sort of infiltrated our industry and are working with these big companies to just try to, interestingly enough, from a purely stock market shareholder perspective, do the right thing, which to them is create value.
Right.
Which when you go, how do you do that? Well, you increase top line revenue, and you also decrease spend. And how do you do that? Well, you fire people, and you make games more predatory. And how do you do that? And how do you do that? So this begets this whole sort of pathway where you realize that we're driving away from innovation. We're driving away from new school ideas. We're driving away from prototypes, and we're driving towards big budgets of this extrapolation machine.
Right.
And so when I realized that there wasn't like clear thought leadership on the path forward, I was like, well, what if I did that? because I kind of did a little bit of that when I was at PlayStation.
Right, you were there for
at PlayStation. I was the head of third-party relations, and so all the content, we were responsible for all the content on the platform. So we were able to negotiate with all the different publishers and developers and stuff like that. So I had a really good idea of like what makes mutually beneficial, partnerships.
Right.
So that was the idea for Vivrato. So I realized if we can compete or sort of displace some of these, East Coast elite consultancies with more of an Imagineering approach, right? It's about the heart and soul of games. Games are software
Pixar
products.
Kind of
how do you make it feel good? I mean, of course, it's still the goal is to sell units, right? That's it has to make money,
right?
But we can do it, I think, in a meaningful way in which we're not just firing everyone that doesn't work out or shuttering a studio that has all this sort of like cohesion and muscle that they've built up over years.
Right.
So our primary clients aiming to work with are big companies, right? Publishers, platforms, venture capital firms, private equity firms, big studios, middleware companies, engine companies, to help sort of guide their leadership team to build sort of strategies where we can be more mindful about the future of the industry, but also just think outside the box about how to approach complicated issues.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a little scary when those consultants from the words that start with D's and M's and things like that, if come descending in with their MBAs,
repelling just like through the AC, right. Like where'd they come from?
Like Christmas Vacation when
buy low, sell high
SWAT team shows up, right? They come in with their spreadsheets and they're like, "Hey, you gotta fire all these people. They do this," and you're like, "Okay, but this team just needs a shift in perspective, and maybe they can get something going again."
It's usually in the building, right? The right ingredients are in the building. It's just the right sort of, you need to apply the right pressure. And you and I understand that it is about coaching, mentoring, understanding. And I think the challenge that they face is you can't come into the games industry. And I'm not saying we're special snowflakes by any stretch, but it's like, to me, building games, being on a dev team is like having children. And what I mean by that is everyone can have an opinion that doesn't have kids. But you're not going to take advice from someone that doesn't have kids about how to raise your children.
Yeah, shut up. You wouldn't talk to me when you have kids, all right?
Right, and then making games the same. Like if you haven't, I was joking about this earlier today, if you haven't like held on to that submission disc to make sure there's no fingerprints as someone loads onto a plane to fly to submit it to Foster City,
right?
If you haven't like pooped yourself because you realized that one bug you're supposed to check in didn't get in the final submission build.
Right.
If you don't have 80 people around your dev team breathing down your neck,
dude, you're giving me PTSD right now. I'm just like, whoo. Yeah.
Well, but that is, and not that you just have to do that because not everyone has that experience or perspective.
Right.
But because I've done that on the devs team, I've done it on the publishing side, I've done it on the platform side, to understand all the different components, and then also someone who loves the industry and loves games and gamers, understanding what what they could, what we could predict around their behavior. So how do we sort of just recalibrate? Because it isn't a start.over, it isn't a race del star.star, right? Format C drive.
Right.
It is a tweaks. Maybe sometimes there's players on the team or members that aren't the right fit, but like you can get greatness out of most teams. Sometimes they just haven't had the right guides. Sometimes it is some of the leaders that we had worked with that are militant, auteurs,
right?
And other ones are the charismatic ones that want to take you on a journey. So
yeah, and it's about people who have shipped games that understand that process, right? The consultants descending with their spreadsheets and their formulas don't understand what that means. They don't understand. We're like, the car's running and I'm waiting for Brian LeBaron with the discs to come running out so I can drive at breakneck speed to FedEx and catch the 10 o'clock to get these discs off to Sony, right? Like, they've not been through that labor of.
Or Scott Bayless would always say, right? We're building the aircraft carrier as the jets are trying to land, right? Like the aircraft, it's the landing pad isn't even done yet.
Right. Yeah, all that shit's going on.
And now it's just it's different. Obviously, the stakes aren't as high with submissions and stuff like that you can patch things, but the fundamentals are the same of a group of people building something that's important and trying to get that out to the marketplace. You can't pull it in 6 months because someone had a cool idea. A lot of this stuff is like it has to sit in that oven for the right amount of time. And it's really difficult to understand, like finding the fun. You and I both know this. Like you can put it in a schedule like, here's 2 months for finding fun. It's the fun finding phase.
Right.
And meanwhile, leadership
Check.
is like, "Where's the fun, you son of a bitch?" Right.
Right.
And
You're
then the
painting
guy's
around
like,
the
"No,
target. You're painting around the target. This is boring." Yeah.
make it more red. No, make it more blue. Make it more red. You're like, okay. So some of it is sort of the common sense approach, but a lot of it is just sort of understanding the problem set and what the goals are, what they're trying to achieve. And so,
Right.
with some of our clients, whether they're trying to build a publisher from scratch, or they're trying to change their portfolio strategy, or they're trying to, boost into AA product, development from AAA down or from indie up. How do you approach that? What's the right approach? What's the right amount of products? How do you build a publishing strategy? So there's a lot of these complicated things. Part of our approach at Vivrato is I've built this advisory network of all these incredibly talented people that have been in the industry for a long time. Some of them have retired, some have been very successful in their career paths, but they want to pass on their knowledge too. So it's not just like Adam has all the answers, because none of us have the answers. But I can put together a team of people that can basically solve almost any challenge in the industry, which is, I think, super unique. A lot of people just go out there and be like, I got this. But I think it's important to rely on other people from different sort of disciplines that can sort of combine.
Approach. Like what's your perspective? What do you have that's different than what I may have? And figure out collectively how to solve stuff. No, that's interesting. What's the biggest shift you've noticed in the way games are made and sold? Right, like that's a pretty big question. But.
That is a big question. That is one of the many sort of myriad of issues of just like how so many of them are Titanic-like productions. Right, when you're talking about 500, 800, 1,000 people. I mean, what was the biggest team we managed at Midway? 120 probably on MK. Did your team ever get that big? 130?
Yeah, the core team was 30 to 40, and then there were shared services, right?
Yeah.
But that was 20 years ago. But yeah. But now it's just
Yeah, it's massive, and so you got to realize. I mean, if you look at we've all looked at the credits list for these AAA games when they come out, or whether it's a Call of Duty or an Assassin's Creed, and it's just like 17 studios collaborated with thousands of people. So it's complicated, a lot of moving parts, and the expectation of gamers, I think nowadays with the proliferation of Roblox and Minecraft, and they want everything Fortnite, they want access to everything. They want everything to be reasonably priced or free, and they can even now in Fire Up Call of Duty, I'm like, there's 19 modes to choose from. Am I going to do Prop Hunter, or am I going to do Zombies, or am I going to do Warzone, or am I going to do Squid Games mode and stuff like that. So it's really just more complicated to sort of drive users to your game. And then once they're in that ecosystem, they're less incentivized to leave because there's so many options. Back in our day, you'd grab a game, chow through it, and you're like, man, in a month or two, I'm like, I'm hungry for something different.
Right. And there were the different cadences when different games hit, and it was a little more predictable, and there was just less stuff out there. But, there's so much... you see on Steam, I can't remember the numbers, but it 10x what stuff used to be not that long ago, and how do you stand up from the crowd and stuff.
Well, and then the other on top of that, also we have then TV shows and movies and streaming devices that are pushing content every day. So
exactly.
Before it was like, okay, you have whatever, let's say 8 websites you would go to, and you plan your year out of like, okay, I'm going to buy every quarter, every month. I can afford to buy one game every 3 months. So it's going to be this game here, and then that game here, and that game here. Nowadays, things are popping up. You can't rely on a 2-year sort of hype cycle to draw attention to a game. It's like one and done, and it comes out. And so some things you got to be surprised by, and so it's a lot harder, I think, to plan your gaming career. And then you get into comfort zones. I'm in this right now. I'm playing Vivrato a ton. I'm playing Astroneer. I think the System Era team is just genius. I'm playing Call of Duty Zombies. That's like my MP PvE stuff. And those are my comfort foods right now. I probably have been stuck in that rut for the last 2 months. Bringing along my Xbox on road trips and be like, just plug it in and do my dailies on Zombies. But I want to try new stuff. But the barrier of entry to get into something new, figure out what the right thing is. I mean, we have a hard enough problem when you sit down with Netflix. Like, what are we going to watch next? You usually watch 90 minutes of trailers. Right?
No, I want to watch this. No, I want to watch this. Yeah, you're going back and forth all the time.
So it's harder to find stuff. It's harder to create discoverability. So there's it's all of these issues, I think, across the spectrum, which is why that list got so big. The list got so big is because so many aspects of what we're doing in the industry has changed. And I think we spend so much time being fearful of it, or the headlines, or can you believe, or this happened, or that happened, versus what's the path? Like, how do we actually build navigation through the darkness to actually build a process? How do we embrace TikTok and Reels and Shorts to actually get attention?
Right.
How do we embrace building a community on Discord versus Reddit or Twitter? Stuff like that. Right now, everyone's just trying their own thing, and there's little talks about it here and there, but I don't see a lot of actionable sort of plans, or people are doing it, they're just doing it in little pockets. So how do we bring all that together as a bigger movement?
And it's overwhelming, right? Like, where do you put your bandwidth? Do you do this? Do you do this? Like me with the show, like, do I want to spend time with TikTok? Or like, I don't know. There's, or other areas, or LinkedIn, right? Like, it's just, it's overload, right? Like there's so much out there. So like, how do you pick and choose, and who do you trust? Because then, you get the emails from the people like, I got all the answers. It's like, really? Like, you're cold emailing me because you got all the answers, right? Like,
I did have that when I announced everything. I had another consultant that basically was sending me like, clearly these form or AI created messages.
Quick question.
Nothing personal about them. And I was like, oh, if you're also trying to do what I'm doing, this is not how we do this.
Yeah. That's kind of how I got into recruiting too back in the day, because like there was not all of them, but a lot of people were just like, used car salesman and like all caps and spammy, and it's just like, no, man,
caps.
Like
animated flames, right? From
right, like big bucks, and it's like, we didn't want them representing the company. We're doing outreach and stuff, so there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of posers. There's a lot of influencers that haven't done shit out there talking. Speaking of turbulence, right? Like layoffs, studio closures, right? Like, literally, there was 2 today, right? With Ubi, and then was it Phoenix?
Yeah, Phoenix Labs in Vancouver.
Yeah,
I know.
Oh man, that's hometown. I know. Vancouver. So how do you think studios and publishers need to do things differently, just to not survive but actually thrive, right? Because like right now it just feels just like all the time.
It's like a pressure cooker with headlines every week. It's really difficult because every company's on their own journey, and they're trying to right their ship or make good financial decisions, and it's really difficult for them to line up, how can we foresee every change that we're going to have to make and make one fell swoop change for a large organization? So that's why we're seeing from some companies every quarter a different decision gets made, which is a different business unit and stuff like that. The part, though, that does sort of break my heart the most, not that, everyone losing their job, that's super tough. That's incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
When studios close, though, you lose all of the history.
Right.
It's like a town being demolished. Everything, right? Where all the from the flood lines of where the overflowing toilets,
here's where you got to replace the drywall up to.
Melted the drywall. But not only that, but just that the cohesion and that team chemistry and the history and that all just dissipates.
Right.
Like a Thanos snap. And that to me is so sad, because
it's hard to build.
Team, you can't, building it from scratch is like, that's why, I don't think any team can start from scratch and then build an 85 rated product. Like, you have to get its iterations. It's game 3, maybe if you're lucky, it's game 2, more likely it's game 5. And so if each game's taking 3 years to make, we're talking about a 15-year journey, right? Just to get to a place where you're like, not competent. I mean, there's a lot of competent studios, but
excelling though.
But instead we go, just summon together these 5 people, and they can make something super special. And I hope they can. And nowadays, I think with tool access and stuff like that, maybe there's a better journey. But I think it's that's the sad part of the victims. And of course, the other part that's totally heartbreaking is that a lot of people won't come back to the games industry. Out of all the whatever, I think we're 38,000 probably heads now, close to that, and it's like half come back if we're lucky. If those job numbers come back in the next 2 years, and if not, they're gone forever. And then we've done and that's the thing, is like, we overinflated during COVID, but now we're sort of like, I don't want to say right sizing, where maybe we're overcorrecting, maybe we're just correcting. But I think the thing that's challenging is that the capital's still there. The coffers are still full. It's just everyone's afraid to deploy capital and invest in new content because it's so unpredictable for the future. When you and I both know that if you just made a bunch of maybe little bets or smaller bets, maybe you could get some returns.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I read something recently. It was like 34,000 layoffs over the last 2.5 years.
Yeah.
You know, and the number used to be, before all of this, like the average tenure in the industry was like 7 years, right? So like what is it now, right? Like after all of this, so yeah, like this is perfect for the next question, because like who the hell wants to get into this? But like, you know, switching gears to people that want to get in the industry, like, you know, here in 2025, like what's your advice now, given this landscape, given the competitiveness, given everything that's going on? You can speak generally, or you can kind of get into disciplines, whether it's art, design, production, engineering. Like, you know, what are your thoughts for these people now who are aspiring? Like, I want to do it. I want to get in, right? Like, help me.
Yeah, I mean, you have to outperform the class. If we think about the allegory to college, you know, acceptance, I think, you know, some of the colleges my daughter was thinking about applying to, like, got 110,000 applications. And when I was a kid, they probably got 15,000. They were accepting 12, you know? The games industry is like that, too, where everyone wants to be in it. I think what's really difficult is I care about this industry so much, I would never work at another one, and I would force my way back in. But that's coming from a very, you know, privileged position of someone that got in 29 years ago through a fluke, through applying in a newspaper ad for a EA game testing job and got the gig.
But nowadays, got me in too. Yes,
you have to hack. Just like game popularity, you have to hack the awareness system and the algorithm. And how do you do that? I'll give you a couple examples. You know, I've got right now one of the people that's working with me. I do sometimes some projects with schools where I basically do these master's projects where you submit sort of a semester-long project. Okay. And so somebody saw the posting. They read a bit about the company. This is before I had even announced it. And this person reached out and said, I'd love to just pick your brain. And then he picks my brain. You know, he's going to school right now. He's doing this master's program. And he's like, you know, I really want to do this project, you know, but I have to find 4 other team members and we're going to bid on it. He said, but beyond that, you know, I want to come work with you right now. And I have 18 months where I can work with you part-time, you know, as an intern. And I'm like, okay. He's like, and I'll not work with anyone else. I was like, he's like, I believe in the mission. This is what I want to do. This is my background.
Devote myself to it.
And I was so inspired. I was like, you got it. Let's do it. I said, and I'm going to give you enough rope to prove yourself, or it's not going to work out, and that's fine too. But it's hard to create those scenarios. You have to stand out, though. When you're submitting your portfolio or you're submitting your resume, it's a thoughtful cover letter, customized, that is personalized. You have many tools right now that can help you. You have Claude, you have DeepSeek, you have ChatGPT. I know a lot of people like to roll their eyes on that, but you can use it with enough human interaction that it can add a little bit of just help you sort of scale a bit. Yeah, definitely. And the person reading it isn't going to probably notice, right? If I think these
if you edit it, right, and you're not just
if you make it personal, right, exactly. Like a lot of times, I'll just read to it and then be like, okay. Add some context about this, but in this language or in this voice and stuff like that. Yeah. It's just what you're trying to do is you're not trying to say that AI is going to do your whole job for you. You're just trying to hack the awareness meter and the algorithm so that way they notice you. Because if they see that you've written a really thoughtful thing about, oh, John, I've been listening to your podcast and really love the work that you did back at Midway, and I can't believe you had to work with John Vignacchi, and you're like, oh, who is this person and how do they know so much about me? But that's the way that what would you do if you saw that? You would be like, I got to talk to this person. Yeah. It's that simple. And there's ways now in which you can find enough information about someone to get through that, to hack that algorithm. I know I keep saying hacking the algorithm like we're on some doing some weird plot for a Keanu Reeves movie.
Bullet
hack
time.
the planet. But it's true, and same with the portfolio. Like if the portfolio is super slick and stands out, a lot of people want to show everything they've ever done. Just show the coolest stuff. Just you know, don't show it just like, this is my progress over 7 years. I'm like, no.
And here's my concept I did when I was in 12. And I'm like, man, we don't care. Right.
Doesn't matter. I think I also want to hear about team, interactions, how you've run teams or worked with teams, how you interact. I want to hear about challenges. I think especially when you're talking about getting the interview phase of talking about vulnerabilities or learnings, I failed at this and I learned to do that. That age-old question that you've asked probably a million times, like, what do you feel your biggest weakness? It's like, well, I'm too organized.
Right.
I'm always
I care too much.
You're like, no, actually, I have a CPAP machine and I mouth tape because I have this whole nasal breathing issue. Right? That's my weakness. My weakness is anyone can suffocate me at night by just taking off my apparatus and I'm dead. So, but I just don't think there's enough real talk because everyone's sort of playing a role of being the best. I don't think that's what we're looking for with good.
The social media
people.
thing.
I just want real talk. I want some honest human being that talks about their love of their dogs or their Lego collection or the games they're playing and why and why they're the best fit for the job, and they've done a lot of research and they know. I remember one time I was interviewing someone and said, well, what brought you when I was at Iron Galaxy Studios?
Okay.
So what made you apply?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, well, when I drive to work, I pass this building, and so the commute would be way shorter. That was her answer for why she applied at the company. I was like, so I don't think it's going to be a good fit.
Right.
So you think about if that's the competitive nature of the people applying.
Yeah.
But I do think you have to the personality aspect, you have to have resiliency. I think it's really important to have thick skin and resiliency, because if these issues do happen, I had someone that joined when I was at one company, and they're like, if we ever get laid off, are you going to start with the most junior people? Mm-hmm. And you're like, I mean, hopefully not. I haven't thought about that, but I guess technically that could be the outcome. I mean, the other part is don't come in just because of love, because you will quickly see how the sausage is made and realize that there's a disconnect between the glorification of how amazing it is to someone being like, if you don't finish, modeling that bootstrap by 11 p.m., you're in trouble. Your Jira ticket's going to expire. Right.
It's fun to drive a Ferrari, so it must be fun to make it. And like, not necessarily, right?
Yeah, that was actually one of the biggest misnomers. I went to one graduating class from a certain college, and I was talking to some of the grads, and I'm like, where do you want to work? I'm like, I want to work on Assassin's Creed. I'm like, okay. I said, where do you want to work? Not what do you want to work on? But anyway, I said, so humor me. What is it about? I just love the game. I love the immersiveness. Okay.
Right.
Which studio? Like, what do you mean? I want to work on the game. I'm like, at which studio? Like,
because it's
Singapore or Montreal. Are we going to UK? Are we going to Stockholm? Like, oh, I didn't think about that. I'm like, okay, the cultures of each of those are quite different. The local cultures are different. And they're like, oh, I didn't really think about that. I'm like, okay, so think about that stuff. Like, these are the things that everything's at your fingertips. Every interview from every person that's ever worked at the company is on YouTube. Right. You can learn so much about a company and their culture, and you can refer to those things. And that's how you hack. You just hack by trying and doing research and caring. And I know it's hard for people because they put all their eggs into one basket, but I think you can do enough almost crowdsourcing of knowledge gathering, so you're not spending 9 hours on each company. Like, especially if it's a big company for your dream job, you should spend a few hours to do research on it.
Definitely.
That's good. We're going to know that, right? I mean, how many times, John, have you known exactly when a candidate has no idea what company you work for?
Right. Or cover letters to another company and be like, oh, come on, man. just don't suck. Come on. We got attention to detail. Yeah. Right. Well, my thought is always it's snipers, right? You're not spray and pray.
Yes.
And people just sit there and they click on Indeed, send. Am I qualified? No. The job description is just nice to have. It's like, no, people spend a lot of time writing those. Yeah. It's not nice to haves. So if it's a senior role and you're working as a truck driver, no offense to truck drivers, but like, you have to have experience, right? Like, don't waste everybody's time. There's two levers. There's you and the market, right? Like, you can't change the market. You have to change you. So be strategic. Think through it. Write a good example of a resume. Apply to jobs that align with your experience. Yeah. Not just like, I miss every shot you don't take. Like, okay, Wayne Gretzky, like whatever.
Keep his name out of your mouth. No.
Sorry. I know. I was like, oh shit, I'm making a hockey
talking to
reference.
Canadian now. Yeah, we're in trouble.
I know, and I'm like, whoa. I was like, I almost caught myself on that. But
even with basic stuff like when I remember there was one job description where like it requires a cover letter and one sentence of what to put in the cover letter. And it was great because when they were clicking from Indeed and they didn't put a cover letter, I'm like, denied.
Right.
And then when they did and they didn't follow the instructions, I'm like, denied. Like, if you can't just do the simplest thing at the start,
right.
What are we doing?
Yeah, or it's like they type in cover letter and that's their, Yeah. I've had text files, right, with just like, random stuff.
Resume?
Like a text file resume, and you're like,
Startup
just trying to hit a quota. You got to have some skin in the game, right? Yeah. And I could go on for a while about this, but I'll throttle back.
But I think the other way that I've thought about it too is that like there's so many people, especially in video games, there's so many people that came from the applicant's position, that came from nothing.
Yeah.
So one way that I found that's pretty.
Hey, if you're finding this interesting, please click the like and subscribe button so the YouTube algorithms know and I can help spread the show. Thanks.
Beneficial, and I make a rule of this: of people just like ping me on LinkedIn that have no experience and are just graduates or something like that. Like, I'll usually respond, make a point of like doing a call with like at least one a month or something like that if they reach out cold, and be like, I'd love to get your advice on how to do this. So if you reached out to 20 people, let's say on LinkedIn, that you knew have a role that's like 10 years or more senior in the industry,
right? And
you just said, my name's Johnny V. I have no experience at all.
I don't work at Nintendo.
No, and if you just sort of like told a moving story about your intent, your passion, your love for the industry, and said, I would just love 5 minutes for your advice. I need your help. As soon as you position yourself, it's like, putting your hand up to the king, right? As soon as you position yourself in a subservient position, I'd love to just get 5 minutes for some help or advice. I think asking for advice or asking for help is the hack. Because as a human, you read that note.
Right.
And if you're like most people, maybe you go, I just don't have time or I have too much on my plate. And I get that too. Like, not everyone's going to respond, which is totally understandable. Yeah. But someone will.
Right.
And if you do it enough and it's thoughtful and you're not just spamming, again, you're not spraying and praying. You're like, hey, I saw the video that you did or that interview that you did or that presentation from GDC back in the day or you were on that podcast or that article you wrote or saw that art that you did or went to your Twitter account, you did this cool post. Any of like, it's just like online dating.
Personalize it. Yeah.
If you just if you go, hey, send, you're like, what are we doing? Right. You got to do something personal. Right. But I guarantee you, it's just, and that's just, to me, that's like trying 10%. And then there's another there's 10 more levels you can go up if you want to be like the absolute inner circle. Yeah. But if people aren't even doing the first step, then you're already making it above the vast majority of people. And then the second step, so all these things are just ways to hack. You're basically just stacking the deck in your favor.
You're way above the person that just does 48 Indeed clicks and then says, well, I did it for the day. I'm just going to go back to complaining, right? Like,
complaining to the partner like, no one wants me.
Right. And you see like, I applied for 1,400 jobs. You see a stuff on LinkedIn. I'm like, really? 1,400 jobs? Like, what are you applying for, right? There's no way that anyone's nearly qualified to apply for 1,400 jobs, right? So, it's curated. It's realistic. It's
one shot won't kill you. You absolutely nailed it. Yeah, it's that sniper method.
And I guess kind of the same thing for people. People in the industry, they've gotten laid off, right? Like, a lot of these same strategies apply, right? Like, it's not just boom, 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 but like being strategic, right? Because it's tough, right? I know people are out there and they're looking, but you got to be surgical. You got to be a sniper. You can't just throw spaghetti at the wall.
And I think there's also opportunities nowadays. We have, not only do we have access to, ubiquitous access to like engines and tools.
Right. Yeah. Right.
But even abilities to build your own businesses and do stuff on your own or doing, contracting and stuff like that. Like, again, it's hard. It's all hard. And it's not for everyone. Yeah. But there's ways to just, make ends meet. And again, totally understand I'm coming from a very privileged position where I've had a, nice career. But it's tough. I mean, there's also that amazing website. I'm sure you plug amirsatvat.com all the time.
Yes.
His game dev resources are incredible.
It's really good.
Great support structure there for people. And then that's right, getting around like-minded people. He's got an amazing Discord too with community managers and stuff like that. Talk to people all the time. And just keep at it. But at the same time, John, the reality is nowadays, we can't just be like, keep hope alive. Like, people have to pay bills.
No,
I remember telling my wife one time when we were moving from California back to Chicago, and I said, listen, if this doesn't work out, I will get a job at Subway as a sandwich artist. And I said, and we can move to your dad, hometown in Michigan, and pay off a small house there, and that's our life. And that's a pretty good life, and maybe that's temporary. Maybe you can get back in. Maybe if you have to do something that's sort of for a couple of years,
stopgap.
Stopgap. Because it is. I think that's the saddest part, is that everyone hoping after month 1, month 6, month 12, it gets really, really challenging very quickly.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't have a partner, multiple income, or family to rely on, or places to go. I mean, it could get
really
pretty sad
scary.
and fast.
And then you can keep the passion, keep the dream, work on stuff on the side, but you gotta take care of bills and whatever the situation is, and hopefully then come back stronger, and especially when the industry comes out of this, a year from now, and then you land a gig, right? Maybe your dream gig, right? But it's just, I feel for all the people that are out there, again, it's 130 people, I think, at Ubi today, right? And then Phoenix. So that's tough. What about a sneak peek of like what's coming up? Like, is there any, projects or like partnerships that you can talk about, or you hyped about, or like what can you share? Like,
I've got a few clients I'm working with. Pretty fun working with studios all over the world. So
cool.
I've got this awesome client called The Parasite, based in Krakow, Poland.
There's a lot of talent in Poland.
Oh, dude. I spent a lot of time in Poland.
And I'm not just saying that because I'm Polish. But I'm,
No, absolutely. Like, I think it's really fascinating. Another group, One More Level, which are really talented guys. And there's a group in Slovakia called Games Farm and Grindstone. They just came out with a game called Jotun Slayer, which is like a vampire survivor, but it's like more like Diablo style.
Okay.
Awesome co-dev studio called Rushdown up in New York we're working with.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Group. Yeah, they're a super talented group.
Yeah, and good folks up there. Yeah.
Yeah, and then another really sort of like, they haven't announced much, but it's called Operative Games out of LA. So a lot of really fascinating different aspects of working with companies to help positioning and help sort of growth strategy and help, not just on the biz dev side, but like, what do we want to be when we grow up? A lot of conversations I wish that I had with myself, 10 years ago with different partners and stuff like that. But it's been, that part's been really fun. Because a lot of times when you're in a situation where you don't know what you don't know, or people are like, so we're just going to, set up, how do we set up financing for, we want to raise some money. Do we do venture capital? Do we do debt financing? And like, what are the options and what are the pros and cons? And now the good part about my network is you can call upon a lot of people that know. Like, I have an opinion, and let's call in 3 different people that are friends that we can ask them perspective. And then they sort of give perspectives. But a lot of the focus is sort of bigger project proposals and stuff like that to work with other clients as well. So it's just basically getting out of the gate. It's just me and my squad of incredible support. Jack, Zach, Sebastian. They've been super helpful on the journey. And then we'll see where it goes from here. But the idea is to hopefully build a firm out that we can work with a bunch of different companies and help the industry sort of go in the right direction. So we're not having the same conversation on my third appearance on the podcast.
Right. You are the first multiple person ever on the podcast. So
thank you, John. I'm honored.
And this is the new look for 2025 with the new software. So
love it.
You're
looking slick.
Yeah. You're
you not me.
Not me. No. You're blazing here on the podcast. So that's cool.
Awesome.
What about games you're playing right now? You're excited about? You talked about some of those games. Your comfort food games. Anything you're like, man, I got to get to that, or what about
yeah,
that?
I'm mad because there's a lot of games that I've downloaded, like Star Wars Outlaw. I really want to play it. I really want to play it. Baldur's Gate 3, I got about 2 hours into it, and I accidentally attacked a town member, and they wiped my party, and then my save was like an hour and a half back, so I was like, oh, might as well. I think that was an omen to like, hey, maybe not right now. Because what I realize is I am crunching like we did at Midway when I'm starting my own company. Because where you're doing logo development, website, you're doing outreach, you're organizing, I'm building merch. Podcasts. I've got boxes of merch, and you're doing promotional stuff. And then you're trying to get new clients, and you're waking up. I got a lot of European clients, so it's very early mornings. But not a what was me or poor me. Like, it's just... It's invigorating. I love working. I mean, I'm sitting at this desk from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. at night every day, and it reminds me of the olden days. It feels good because it's all mine, and I get to build it, and whatever comes of it is. And if I fail,
control the destiny, right?
Yeah, I'll own it, and you'll see me somewhere else. But I'm pretty psyched about it.
Yeah, and it is cool the fact you can work all over the world, and it's just you got to set your alarm early or stay up late, but you can do that kind of stuff. It's at Midway we were just always kind of confined with our little space of doing stuff there, but
all-weather link cool. I know, locked in our little offices, right? Just being like,
is the bucket gonna fall with the water on my head, right?
Sweating in those stinky offices. It was so strange that we were all in offices.
And just to sidetrack, I was talking to somebody today that worked at Surreal, out in Seattle, and I'm like, yeah, I saw your studios, you MFers, right? Like right on the water, and beautiful, and everything's all nice, and everyone's on their little scooters, and it's like this beautiful, and like we're back at HQ, and there's literally buckets of drain water falling through ceiling tiles, and we're like, what the F, man? How did this work out? So
I think that's why Iron Galaxy's offices are so nice, because Dave was like, never again. Never again. The Nashville office is right. It's so nice. And the Chicago one's amazing too.
Oh, yeah.
It's great. But it's like, it is totally like an FU to that old 2727 Roscoe.
Right.
Well, you guys were in a different building. You guys were in the fancy building. We were in the sports building, which was the second-class citizens. You never came to visit us. How many times did you come to the sports building, John? How many times?
Dude, I remember.
You never came over to visit us.
I remember leaning up against the wall when you walked in where Touchmaster was. My wife called me and said, oh, we're having twins. And I just kind of went, and I remember like standing there just like deer in headlights going, so
that's amazing.
Yeah, and then I would go in when it would flood, and then we'd have to get the PS2s off the ground because the water was rising in the sports building because we were crunching, and we didn't want 20K PS2s that we didn't even own getting flooded. And then they'd come in, pull the carpeting, cut the drywall, throw the new drywall, put new carpeting.
The black mold just seeping into the 2x4s. Probably the 1x2s. They couldn't even afford 2x4s.
It was the deep well. The water fountain was shooting a hole. It was like Poltergeist. It was shooting a hole in the ceiling tile, and it was just water. And the toilets, people came screaming like, "Oh my god!" Because the toilets were like going, and it was, 1 a.m, and you're crunching and you're delirious, and then all of a sudden, it's like apocalypse levels of water and shit and everything flying in the sports building, and we're like, what is going on?
There's people listening to this right now being like, there's no way that's real. There's no way that's real. That's OSHA. The OSHA violations are
yeah, Neil's real worried about that kind of stuff. Yeah, whatever. You'd be so fishes. Yeah.
We own your fucking dreams.
We own your dreams. Yeah, the story is that insert coin, Josh needs to make the sequel and get people like you and I in there to tell those stories, because we've got them. Speaking of, I'll ask you the question again. Do you have another funny story, from the industry, 29 years, something you'd like to share you didn't share last time about working in the industry? I'm sure you got a Rolodex of them.
I guess we could go to the Midway ones, because they were so fascinating around working with celebrities, especially. I remember I was just telling the story recently where We were doing Midway Slugfest Loaded, which was a sports game.
Right.
Right, with Sammy Sosa on the cover.
Right, Spielhoff?
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry,
Sammy Sosa. And so we go, and I'm a young associate producer. How old am I at the time? I'm probably like 26, probably.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, we're going to do a photo shoot. Right. And this is before I got to meet Lawrence Taylor and do that whole shamil.
Oh, yeah.
So I go down, they're like, we're going to do a photo shoot in Miami. And I'm like, okay, cool. And at the time, they're like, we want you to start doing like this blog series for IGN about Slugfest Loaded. I was like, okay, great. So I'm writing about the dev team. I'm writing about all the work we're doing.
Right.
And then we go down there, and I start like writing notes about this visit with Sammy Sosa because he's doing the warm ups, doing the photo shoot.
Yeah.
And his agent keeps handing him solo cups, these blue solo cups, right? So he's got like under this skirted area. He's like, and Sammy's like having a good time and swinging and all that stuff. And I was like, oh, dude. So I'm like making notes. I'm like, blue solo cups. He's getting shittered. This is the best. And then Sammy comes up, and Sammy's, Dominican, and he's got a very thick accent.
Right.
And the tagline is Slugfest Loaded, it's loaded. Right? So he sits down, and we explain that to him.
Right.
And it sounds something like Sigfest Rory is Rory. And we're like, so it's, and we're like, okay. And it's hard, right? Somebody's got a thick accent. I'm not, it's like, okay, now it's Slugfest Loaded. It's loaded. And he tries again. It's Sigfest Rory. It's Rory. And then he's getting angry and saying, Rory. It's Rory.
Right.
And finally, after about 20 minutes, his agent he leans over to us. He goes, change the name of the fucking game. And we're like, no, dude, this is trademarked and everything. Like, it's the real name. So I bet there's a video somewhere of like as close as we got it. So we get outside, we're talking, and I'm like, all right, Sammy, so what are you up to? Like, later we should hang out, right? Have dinner with the squad. And he's like, yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. Yes, let's do dinner. I know the perfect place. I was like, oh, that's so cool. So I tell the other guys, like, we're going to do it with Sammy Sosa.
Because he was he was a big star at the time too, right?
At the time, man.
Yeah.
He was the Cubs. It was the biggest deal.
Right.
It was the biggest
it's like
deal.
the Michael Jordan of baseball at this time.
Yeah. I mean, he was crushing McGuire. Yeah, basically it was that big. It was that whole era.
Yeah,
right?
those guys are each
each natural, just pure natty.
Just
absolute
sheer
natty.
will, just show will, just lifting weights.
Yeah. So he
nothing enhanced.
So he says, yeah, we'll totally do dinner. I have this awesome spot.
Yeah.
And then anyway, I'm like, all right, so you want to wait like an hour and a half to freshen up or whatever? And he's like, what's that? I was like, oh yeah, we're just we're meeting him for dinner. And he's like, no, Sammy, you have that thing. And Sam was like, no. And then he's just like, no, you have that thing tonight. And Sam was like, no, I don't. I'm gonna go to dinner with these guys. Yeah. And then he's just like, you have it. Tugs on his arm. You have that thing that you have to go to. And I was like, and he's like, you see him go, all right. He's like, let me call the club. And I'll get you guys to sit at my table. I can't go because I have a thing, but I'll send you. And so we go to the restaurant, which is a restaurant on the main floor, and then we're having an amazing dinner. And they're like, you're Sammy's guest. Any guest of Sammy's a guest of ours.
Anything is yours. Yeah.
It's Miami. It's bananas. It's like, mid-90s, or I guess late 90s. No, early 2000s.
Oh, no, early 2000s.
Early 2000s, yeah. So 2004, probably.
Okay.
So dinner wraps. They don't bring the check. They go, you're coming upstairs to Sammy's table upstairs. And upstairs is the nightclub. And we're like, okay.
Okay.
Anyway, one of our members of our group ended up disappearing into the bathroom where I had to go in later and retrieve him because he had gotten so drunk he had crumpled up by the toilet bowl with his wallet in the toilet. So anyway, we got out of there. That was our Miami story. We made it home safely. Right. But it was so funny because then of course I submit, John, the blog to IGN with all of the stories.
And
they're
still on the phone.
You can still find them today. I found the links. You can still find them today. And the agent demands my termination.
Yeah, whatever, dude. Yeah, agents are the worst.
Demands my termination. And so I get called in, like, Matt Booty's office. He's like, what are you writing this for?
Adam, what are you doing this for?
IGN was really excited, and I'm like, hey, Tim and Mona signed off on it. Riley was alive. Like, I'm like just taking everyone down with me. I'm like, they all signed off on it, and that was always my thing of like, everyone else said yes. Right. Whenever I would get in trouble at Midway, man, it's weird. Why would everyone else was
I'm not going cavalier. Everyone else told me to do it. Yeah.
So that was it taught me a lot, though, because then when Lawrence Taylor came along to do Blitz the League, we were doing voice recording sessions, and then like we got LT on Jimmy Fallon, and we need Jimmy Kimmel. Sorry, Fallon wasn't, I don't think, on yet. And they're like, well, we need someone like in the green room with him. I was like, I'll do that.
Right. I will practice with this.
Absolutely do that.
Yeah.
And we will hang out, and we'll go to dinner, and we'll have the greatest time ever. So I go there, and he remembers me, which is super sweet because we did all the voice recordings together. You know, we gave him the script and worked with him. And I remember he's like, I want to go to a really nice steakhouse. And I pulled one of my favorite stunts ever. Because you know Chicago, like if you're calling on a Friday to go to a fancy steakhouse, you're cooked. You're done.
Yeah.
He had flown in the night before, so Thursday night. I'm going to tell this story because I think everyone should try this once. Is I said, I called up the steakhouse that was like one of the hottest ones. I can't remember which one it was, and I was like, I said, hey, I said I got a bunch of anxiety. I woke up in a hot sweat last night. I said I booked dinner for my friends, or for I made up some like really long tale, like our friends, you know, birthday, whatever. But I booked it like 10 months ago. And I just had a weird nightmare last night that like it never got in the system because it was so long ago. So, you know, she's like, oh my God, what under what name? I'm like, for Lawrence. And she's like, oh my God, for what time? I'm like, it was 7. She's like, we don't have one for 7. I was like, oh, it's everything I was worried about, right? 10 months ago, I knew it was almost a year, and I knew I set my alarm, and then I didn't even think about it, then I woke up. And she's like, oh my goodness, could you do 6:45? I'm like, absolutely, no problem. So we walk Lawrence Taylor to this amazing place, and we have this great dinner. But that was sort of in Chicago. So we're out in LA now. I'm like going to Jimmy Kimmel. I'm like gonna hang out in the green room. Like, oh, you're with
Kimmel's great,
Mr. Taylor. And I go and we're hanging out in the green room, and he's chilling and he's telling funny stories. Like, do you have any money? Yeah, any idea how much money that Michael Jordan owes me in bets? And I was like, tell me. He told me so many things that I like. A lot of the stuff is in confidence. But then the door knocks, and it's I can't remember. It was this hot, brand new, the rookie of the year for the NBA. He comes, super tall guy comes in. He goes, Mr. Taylor, huge fan, biggest fan ever. He goes, I heard you like golf. And LT's like, I love golf. Love golf. And he loves golf. He golfs every day of his life. Like he was taking a red eye back to go to Miami to land at 5:40 a.m. to hit his 6:20 tee time. Like that's how hardcore he was.
Damn.
Every day of his life. And super good from what I hear. Like super, super good at golf. So this young guy is like, yeah, man, he's like, I want to play golf with you sometime. And LT's like, what do you shoot? And the kid's like, I'm probably like, I don't know, 20 over, 15 over. And LT's like, we'll never play together. Just straight up. This guy's like, LT's my hero.
Right. So, and worth my time, kid.
Yeah. So the kid leaves, and I was like, oh my God, that was so badass. He's like, no, unless you're within 2, you know, or plus 3. I think 3, handicap of 3.
Right.
So then 10 minutes later, door knocks again, and it's Matthew McConaughey. And he's all right. Big fan. And LT's like, get in here. And so it's me, Lawrence Taylor, and Matthew McConaughey standing. And
solo
Lawrence
cups involved here? We got some red solo cups?
I wish, man. And LT's like, you know, he's like, man, I love you, McConaughey. I love that movie, Sahara. And I'm like, that's a weird pull. Like, out of all the movies that he's done, he loves Sahara.
Right.
And
going deep in the catalog,
he's like, I got a new movie I'm actually promoting. It's kind of like Jewel of the Nile, but it was a remake with Goldie Hawn's daughter. I can't remember the actress's name, but he's
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, where they fly down. Anyway.
Yeah.
And LT's like, is it like Sahara? And he's like, no, it's like a romantic comedy.
It's a rom-com.
It's like a rom-com. It's just like like Jewel of the Nile or whatever. And he's like, so it's not like Sahara. And I was like, no. Anyway, they talked about how much they love each other, and McConaughey leaves.
Right.
And LD goes, fuck that movie. I want another Sahara. And I go, I'll be right back, Mr. Taylor. And I go running after McConaughey to tell him this news. And LD's like, you get back here right now. He's like, were you actually going to go tell him? I'm like, no, I just was messing with you. Then he goes out on stage for Jimmy Kimmel, crushes it. Like I've been media trading him for 7 years. Murders the interview, comes back. Boom, he's like, I got to catch my flight. And so I had a moment where me, Lawrence Taylor, and Matthew McConaughey talked about Sahara. So
put
those
that in your Moby profile. Yeah,
those were some highlights from those days for sure.
No, that's some awesome stuff. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Is there anything I should have asked you about but didn't?
I don't know. We covered a lot of ground. Covered the industry, covered hiring, recruiting. People got to keep their heads up, like the spirit, keep the spirit alive. I think the important thing that I want to, make sure we're all focused on is that social media isn't everything that lives in the world. Right. And it's oftentimes unplugging is the best advice for people, that you don't have to believe everything you read. If you turn that stuff off, I have a lot of friends that have either deleted or gotten off social media, and that's been super helpful for their mental health. So if you feel very overwhelmed and you feel like you're seeing these headlines, because I felt a way about the industry, and then I went to Madison, Wisconsin, to MDev.
Yeah,
and I felt a different way. And you probably felt the same way, John, that on the drive back, I was like, there's hope. And there's camaraderie, and there's a feeling of brightness in the future. And same thing, I went to Lisbon to DevCom, and I was like, there's hope, and there's, even though it's tough right now, there's still hope and a path through it. It's just going to take time, and we have to be pragmatic about it. We got to do what's right to take care of ourselves and our families and our mental health. But I think it's just keeping your head up and try to keep it positive. And then you can always reach out to John or I if you just want advice, right?
There you go. And then, where can people find you online? Where's the best place to get a hold of you?
Yeah, website, www.vivrato.com. And then we've got, you can email us, contact@vivrato.com. We're basically did a bunch of other awesome chats and podcasts, and then we'll get some community stuff going pretty soon. It's just crawl, walk, run right now, phase of the company.
Yeah, and you're going to be at, I saw DICE too, right?
Yeah, DICE. Yeah, doing a cool workshop at DICE. Yeah, it is in a few weeks. Going to GDC as well, and then a bunch of shows after that. But still working on the whole dance card.
Hang out at the Death Star there at GDC
every time. We always see each other there.
Yeah, that's a good time. And just last question, what's your advice you give others, working in the industry right now? And you kind of touched on it earlier, but just if you want to kind of bundle it up with that.
Sure. Yeah, I think if you're working in the industry already right now, pay it forward. Right? Yeah. If there is positions at your company that you can sort of vouch for or get other people in, contact your recruitment team, see if you can help with outreach or reviewing resumes and stuff like that. If you see roles at other companies, even though you're gainfully employed, if there's anything you can do to sort of help lend a hand to the people that are in need. Right. Just practice kindness, be pleasant and be present, and try to pay that positivity forward. I think that's the most important thing we can do, because the way that our industry is going to survive and thrive is by supporting one another. It takes a village, and so we need to help each other out in these tough times.
Yeah, we all, you and I both, we had our mentors back in the day, and you're grateful for what they did to you, right? And had you not had them, what path have we gone, right? So, well, cool. Well, thanks for being on again tonight. First ever reoccurring guest.
Thanks for having me, John, for the two-time. The two-time.
The two-time. Yeah, there you go. I'll have to do the hat trick in the future here at some point.
There we go.
Yeah. But yeah, congrats with the business and starting the new company. And I'm really excited for you to shake things up and, bring a real perspective to some of this stuff going on, and not just a bunch of spreadsheet people descending from consulting agencies that think they know how to do shit. They're already here, right? They're in the house. They're room.
Walking among us.
Yeah, exactly. And some of those, we got to figure this stuff out. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks for doing this podcast, man. It really means a lot to a lot of people. So keep it up.
Yeah. No, when I hear from people, it's like, okay, I'm not just talking in vain here. People find this useful. So that's nice to hear, but cool.
Awesome.